Hello everyone! It's been a long time. Sorry for my absence. I'll have a few other videos that will explain a little why. But I decided to make my comeback with very good news, which is I finally passed my G2 driving exam. Um, it's been a journey, as you can tell by the title of this video. It literally took me 4 tries and an exorbitant amount of money, but I got there eventually. I did it. It's the day after the actual exam. I did it yesterday, July 17, and I am still over the moon. I'm still so happy because everyone who knows me knew it was a struggle. It was a real struggle. And I'm not going to say driving in Canada is bad or hard. It's just a situation where I am terrified and I don't do well in anxious situations. For example, exams. Don't do well in those. And this was an exam. So there you go. So like I said, this is like my welcome back video. I'll have other videos explaining where I've been, what's been going on. But this has been my main focus, trying to get my driving exam. I also have some very good news that I'll talk about in another video, but let's just focus on this one right here. So first, let's start off with when I was originally supposed to pass that first time, way back at the end of March of this year, March 2022. So I had decided, I think I mentioned this in the video where I got my G1, I had decided to skip G2 and go straight to G1 because I have driving experience back home, and you're allowed to do that. So because I have had 10 years of driving experience in Jamaica, I decided, hey, I just need a few classes. Let me just go ahead and do a few classes, and then I should be okay with G. And G is when you have the full license. You can drive by yourself on the highway. You can drive a certain type of car. I don't actually know the full details. I just know G is the #1 license. And originally I was really pushing to get G because the job I had was kind of wrapping up and I wanted to get back into my field, which I've mentioned so many times here, which is environmental studies. And to do that, you have to have a G license. So that's why I was really pushing to get the G license, and I want to just skip 2 and hurry up and get that. The journey to G license was not as easy as I thought. I failed that exam badly too. So the G exam is when you have general knowledge of road ideas, road concepts like parking, reversing, left-hand turn, right turn, checking blind spot. But then there's another component when you actually go onto the highway, which is, let me tell you from now, the most terrifying thing in the world, because cars are going at 120 miles per hour or kilometers per hour. Very fast. I don't know, like ridiculously fast. And you have to kind of merge while going at a zoom speed. It's terrifying. But I didn't know how terrifying it would have been until I actually did the classes, and knew immediately I had made a mistake. So yeah, I paid for 10 classes, 10 G classes, and the driving exam, and that came up to about $700. Oh, I should probably backtrack. I first went and found a school, and I just Googled, and a few schools came up, and I saw one called Winston's Driving Academy. And from seeing the name Winston, I knew that Mr. Winston must be a Jamaican and I must support him. And I was right. He is a Jamaican Canadian who's been here for many years and has this great school out by Scarborough, which is kind of on the opposite side of Toronto where I am. But I decided to go with classes with them. Now, initially, the first driving instructor I did not like at all. But it's my fault or their fault. I don't know whose fault it was, but he didn't realize it was my first time driving in Canada, and I really didn't have any experience driving on the left-hand side of the road. In fact, honestly, I'll be honest, I've had my license since 2007, but really I didn't drive much, so I technically don't know how to drive. This is why it took me 4 times. So I didn't like that instructor, but luckily I could just tell them how I felt, and they gave me a new one. The new instructor was really good, gave me great advice and information, but he wouldn't have been available for my driving test, and you use the driving instructor's car that you'd be used to, since I don't own a car. And so I was like, all right, peace out with you. Thanks. Let me try someone else. Because I didn't want to wait until they were available. I really wanted to get this driver's license. 10 months later. This is so sad. So then I ended up with my driving instructor, Dan. Dan's the man. I love Dan so much. He's like the best driving instructor. And I felt so bad every time I failed an exam that I was disappointing Dan. But he was so kind and so understanding that's why I just stuck around with Dan, because it was really bad odds. It's like, fail the first time, fail the second time. But we'll get into those details. So I ended up with an amazing driving instructor from Winston Driving Academy. And we were doing classes. I thought I was doing well. And I think I was doing well with the actual highway things. But for that exam, let me just tell you straight up. On the highway, you're supposed to accelerate. You're not supposed to stop. Because that will cause accidents. I kind of accidentally braked when I was accelerating, because when you switch lanes, you accelerate into the faster lane, and I pressed the wrong foot pedal. So I failed. And a couple other things, I stopped when the light was still green, because I thought the countdown was, it was a mess. It honestly was a mess. So once you fail the G, or the challenge G, which is what I did, you have to go back down to the graduated program. So I have G1, I have to go do G2, and then I can go back to G. But luckily, because I have driving experience, I don't have to wait the year like new drivers do to attempt the G. So technically, I could attempt the G next month if I wanted to, but no. Dan and I agreed I'm not ready for G, so I need more driving practice. So that was the first test, and I did that at Metro East in Toronto Central, so like right downtown. And it was bad. It was really bad. But I said, okay, no problem. I failed G. Let's try G2. And G2 is the easier process, where all they test is your driving skills, like parking, reversing, those kind of. Oh, by the way, what's it called? The heater just kicked in. So if you hear a noise, I'm sorry. I'm gonna talk really loudly now. But yeah, so that one you test. That one is the easier one that beginner drivers do, where they just want to test that you know the basics of the road code, maintaining your speed, reverse parking, 3-point turn, parallel parking, all those fun things that I have not done in like 15 years. I don't even know how long. So it was I needed classes. So after paying $700 for the initial classes for the G test, I had to pay $55 to take over the new G2 test, and then I had to pay for new classes to practice G2. And I think I paid for about 5 classes, and then for use of the car. The use of the car, listen, if you have access to a car, you use that car during the exam, because that's one of the biggest expenses when you're doing a driving test, because it's upwards of 150 Canadian dollars to like 240 Canadian dollars just to use a car for the test. So I had to repay that because I don't have a car, and then I had to pay for driving classes, and then also pay for the new test. So that was almost $500. If you're doing the math, I spent a ridiculous amount of money trying to do this. That's why I'm so mad at myself that I failed 4 different times. But I booked the new test, and that was for, let's say, April. I think that one was in April, and this time it was going to be at Downsview. And I made sure the classes were going well. I was understanding the material. I kind of warned Dan. I was like, Dan, I'm not so great with the parking. He didn't realize how bad I was with the parking. So when we get to the Downsview test, the road stuff, I was okay. There were a few mistakes I made that probably would have made me fail, but the major thing that I failed was reverse parking. I've never been good at reverse parking. I hate reverse parking. I hate front way parking. I just hate parking in general, to the point where once I had to ask, I was going to dinner with my best friend, and the one time my parents lent me their car, when I pulled up to the restaurant, it was a tight fit for the parking. I had to call my best friend Shawn. I was like, Shawnee, please come park my parents' car before I scratch it. And she's like, no problem. That's how bad my parking is. I hate it. So when this was at the last part of the exam, that was the worst part because I was like almost there, but they were like reverse park, and I forgot my techniques that Dan taught me, and I messed up and I failed. And I cried because that was the second time, and I really, really wanted to pass that time, but whatever. Then we rebook. I paid for 3 more classes, paid for use of the car again, and we rebooked for Port Union, which is all the way out. I think it's the one all the way out in Scarborough. And at that time, I only could take classes. I could only do the driving test on a Saturday. So here I was on a Sunday. So I had to make my way over there. Did a driving class before. Thought, yes, the 3rd time's a charm. This is gonna be me. I'm gonna get it. Right out of the bat, they asked me to do parallel parking. I forgot my techniques again, and I get so flustered. Like every single other thing they tell me to do after that, I'm just like freaking out because I know I failed, because I kind of did the parallel parking, but I didn't go all the way one way to the right. Instead I went all the way, and then the car wasn't turned. It was a mess. It was a mess. But whatever, failed that. And at that point, I'm just like, I was just like, I give up. I said, I'm doing this one more time. I looked at Dan and said, I'm doing this one more time and I'm done. And at this point, I'm telling people I have driving tests, and then I'm telling people I failed, and they're like, what is wrong with you? My mother was so embarrassed. My mommy was like, don't tell me about any driving. Don't tell me about any driving, because this is ridiculous. And I know it's ridiculous, but it's not my fault. I get nervous, and then my brain goes. So we rebooked. We rebooked for July 17. I paid for 3 more classes, paid again for the use of the car, and at this point I'm racking up, it's almost $2,000 worth of driving classes and expenses, like use of car and test fees. But I'm like, 4th time, I'm gonna get this on the 4th time. I'm praying I'm gonna get this on the 4th time. And I did, during the last few classes that I was doing, things started to click. Like when Dan told me, when you're turning right, you drive into the right lane and look ahead to make sure there's no one. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then when he's like, drive into the left lane and then move over, I was like, oh, you're supposed to do that? He's like, yeah. So at that point, things were clicking. I was more relaxed. I felt more confident. And also, it was my birthday weekend. So I was like, you can't fail on your birthday weekend. Let's not ruin your birthday weekend. So I did it. I went to the test and I passed. It was like, the guy, the instructor, when we pulled up after the test, he's like, congratulations. That was literally me. As soon as he said congratulations, I was like, in the loudest voice ever. It kind of scared him, but it was so awesome to hear that I finally passed after almost $2,000 and like 27 driving classes. I did it. I really, really did it. So now I have a G2 license. I can drive by myself. I think I can drive on the highway, but someone has to be in the car with me. I have no idea. I really need to check what's the difference between a G2 and a G license. But I'm very excited. I don't know if I'm going to buy a car or not. I doubt it very much, because I've never spent more than $500 on one item in my life. Like a computer is the most expensive thing I've ever bought, and that was $700. So a car is like a major investment, plus the insurance, and I'm not into. I don't want to. But I do need to practice, so I'm gonna see if I can do our rentals with those car share things to get the practice I need. But I'm very, very, very happy and very excited. Things are looking very great for me. So I just wanted to like end the video with tips on how to pass. I have quite a few. So the first one is, if you're moving from a different country to Canada and you have driving experience and you think you're the best driver in the whole world, trust me, you're not. You're not ready for the Canadian driving system. People say it's kind of like a con where they're failing people on purpose to get more money. I don't trust that. I just think they're very strict and you have to know how to drive. So I would not recommend that you do the challenge. Don't do the G challenge where if you have experience, you show them you have the experience, and no, don't do it. Just don't bother. Start with the G2, learn the basics over again. What you're basically doing is reprogramming your mind to stop driving like you're driving in Jamaica. Because when we drive in Jamaica, honestly, the way the taxi men stay and the way pedestrians just jump in the street, you're driving defense. You're not thinking about the actual road rules. You're trying not to die on the road. And here it's different. They have rules and you stick by it. And in the driving test, they want to see that done. So if I were you, number one tip, do not go for the challenge. What you need to do is just focus on learning the way they drive in Canada. Get back to the basics, learn those techniques, and just go G2. And then since you have the experience, you don't have to wait the year. After you get the G2, then you do a few classes and go to do the challenge, the G. The second tip I would give is to do driving classes with a professional. Yeah, it's expensive. It's super expensive. It's ridiculously expensive. If you know someone who has a car and they want to teach you, fine. Do classes with them, get practice on the road, use the car, but do at least 2 professional classes with someone from a certified driving school or someone who's a certified driving instructor, because it makes a world of difference if someone else who's not a professional is teaching and they don't know the exact things that would come on the test or what the examiner looks for, because they do this all the time. Definitely go with a driving professional. I also don't recommend that if you're doing it by yourself and you're not going with a driving professional, that you try and book everything for yourself. That's another mistake I made, where as soon as they were opening up the driving test again, because of lockdown, everything was closed down. So they made it available in June, and I booked my exam for like November because I wanted to, as soon as there were times available, get them. Don't do it yourself. Let the school book your driving time when they think you're ready, or let your driving instructor book. They do it all the time. They book constantly for all their students, so they know what's up. They're the professionals. So that's why I recommend that you go with a driving instructor, at least 2-3 lessons, just so you know the exact things you're supposed to do for the exam. The other thing, I just have notes here. The other thing is tip number 3, get lots of sleep. So I think the major reason why I failed the last 3 exams is I was tired. My brain wasn't working. The first 2 exams, I scheduled them for 2:30 in the afternoon, around that time. So I went to work in the morning and then went and left work, rushed to get to the driving center, and then did the exam. So my body was exhausted. My brain wasn't working. The second exam? Listen, that morning was not good for me. I had diarrhea. TMI, but I had diarrhea that morning. And I still went to work because I had to work. I have to pay the bills. And by the end of the day, I was exhausted, and then I had to do a driving test. Of course, my brain is not going to focus and be like alert enough to know what to do. So I failed that crap. But the test I did yesterday, I took time off my part-time job where I usually work overnight. I took time off. I said I have an exam tomorrow. I can't do this. Took the time off, got lots of sleep. When I woke up, my brain was relaxed. It was focused. It was remembering all the things I needed, and that really made a difference. So definitely get a good night's sleep before your exam. Make sure you eat. Make sure your mind is alert, because you have to remember all the tips and tricks that your instructor would have taught you and everything you're supposed to do. So tip number 4 is to do a driving class before the exam. So that's what my driving instructor did, Dan. If the exam was at 12:30, we did a class an hour before and then drove to the center. That way, if I made any mistakes during the driving class before, it's stuck in my mind to not make the same mistake during the actual exam. So that really, really, really helped. So always try and do a driving test right before the driving exam, but make sure you get to the center on time too. Tip number, number 5? I think this is tip number 5. try and do a drive test on a Sunday. That's what I realized too. On a Sunday, the roads aren't so busy, which is nice, you know. So that's a good tip, because they do have drive centers that are open on Sundays. Not all of them. That's the only problem. So I do recommend you try and do a driving test on Sunday when, you know, not rush hour, the roads are clear. It makes a big difference, especially if you're trying to do like a left-hand turn and all those cars are coming in. It gives you anxiety. Yeah, definitely do that. Okay, tip number 6. So on YouTube, I realized there's a lot of demos for the drive centers. So if you just type in, for example, Metro East. Oh, I forgot to mention, my 4th exam, the one I passed, was at Metro East, which was kind of nice because I was familiar with the area, familiar with the drive center. So I knew the route, kind of, not really, because it was G versus G2. But I did watch a lot of the videos that were dedicated to the Metro East Center. So that did help because I got an idea of what they ask you to do, where to drive, how those roads are speed wise, in case, because you know when you're driving you're supposed to check the speed sign. So sometimes I'd miss a speed sign and be like, what speed is this road supposed to be? So with the video, I knew that that main road was 50, even though there wasn't a sign, and the side road would have turned into 40. So it does help. But don't study the exams because they could change the route. For example, the first exam I took, they didn't go the exact way where it was supposed to. So that kind of threw me off and made me get a little anxious. But for the most part, they do show you the exact route and give you tips on how the exam would be. But don't study. So that's it. That's all the information I can give you about my driving experience here. I'm so proud of myself. It was a long journey to getting the license, almost over a year journey, but I did it. And up next is the G license, which I'm probably not going to attempt until very late this year or early next year. But I have my license. So if you have any more questions about driving in Canada or driving tests, or if you have, you know, any questions at all, just let me know. And I am going to make more videos now that I have more time, and I'll give you guys updates on other things that have been going on in the next video. So till then, thank you and see you next time.